And we're live. Welcome to Pen and Stylus Episode 4. I am your host tonight, Nathan Rackley, with co-hosts Ben Girven and Jenn Myers. And today we also have special guest Stephen McCraine. So say hello, Stephen.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me.
Say hello, Jenn.
Oh, hey, hello.
And say hello, Ben.
Hello.
Yeah, so anyways, the stream is actually starting in my ear now, which is awesome, but yeah. I open it up so that way I can see the chat and it started playing my ear. But I muted it now, so I'm good.
Yeah, I had the same problem.
Yeah, so anyways, today, as you can see from our title page, we are getting started with Manga Studio. So for any of you who are watching live, please, on the YouTube or through Twitter, using hashtag Pen and Stylus, please go ahead and send us your questions about Manga Studio, and we will try to answer as many as we can. That's one of the reasons we brought Steve here tonight, is so that way he can help us answer some of those questions. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back to my regular camera. So, hello, this is me, Nathan Rackley, and we are going to go ahead and dive right into Manga Studio. So, Stephen, could you give us a little bit of a kind of a rundown of how you found the program and why you started using it?
It was right when the program started to come out. It's based off of a program called Manga Studio, which was developed in Japan. For manga artists, so it has obviously has a really strong manga basis. But you can draw it in pretty much any style. It's just a great comics tool. And I got a like a $30 copy of the debut version when I was a college student, and I read the manual, and because I had this comics project I had to do, and I was doing for a class, and I basically read the manual and then just drew as fast as I could, and it's so intuitive that it's very easy. Okay, well, there's a slight learning curve, but it's got great tools. Like, you don't have to know everything to make comics with it. So it's a really neat tool.
That's
I'm
awesome.
afraid you read the manual. That's so
Manual directions.
Well, I will say that the manual is one of, you hear it a lot, but it is very important to actually, when you get a piece of software, to read through as much of the manual as you can. I mean, at the very least, skim it. But if you read through the manual, a lot of times it will have a lot of references to things, tips and tricks that are very handy. Manga Studio, because it really is a port, they translated everything and they brought it to the US. They put it into the English language. It is different. It runs a little bit different than a lot of your traditional software that you might use here in the United States and a lot of English-speaking countries. Some of the menus are in different places than you might think they are. Some of the things may be a little bit, they're not intuitive at first when you're looking at them, because you're like, well, why would you have this over here? Adobe Photoshop has it over there, and it's not, it's more of just like a design thing, or a lot of people have gotten so used to using programs like Photoshop that's just sort of become the convention. But a lot of the design decisions actually in Manga Studio, I use it almost exclusively now for my comic illustration when I'm doing digital illustration. I have found that a lot of the design decisions, though they were a little quirky at first, like I didn't understand what the designers were thinking, after a while, and actually after using the tools, I'm like, oh, I actually understand kind of the thought process behind why they're doing this the way they are. And so I just, I thought that was interesting. But anyways, so we've got a couple other people here in the group that also use Manga Studio. Jenn, you use it, right?
I do, yeah. I don't use any manuals, but yeah,
It's cool though. But you use it for what do you use it for?
pretty much everything. I mean, I first started out with, I don't use it for coloring. I know it's supposed to be pretty great for coloring. I've messed around with it a little bit, but I have a specific way of coloring in Photoshop that I really like, and I don't really want to take the time to import my system into that, so I use it for pretty much everything but coloring.
Yeah, and I have noticed that a lot of illustrators like Manga Studio for inking and for lettering, and those are like the two things that a lot of people say the program stands out in. And you know, it's only been in the recent versions that a lot of people have started thinking like, oh, you can actually, it's finally up to the point where you can reasonably color in the software, and that I've noticed that. I've started actually doing color in Manga Studio, which I didn't with version 4, the old version, but now with version 5, I actually find that I do color pieces, or at least get the flat colors done inside Manga Studio, and then I will take it into something like Photoshop to do my finishes and touch-ups.
Can you export it as layers?
Yes, you can. You can export as a Photoshop document with layers.
Oh, that's
it has
good.
full support for all that. At least Manga Studio 5 does.
Okay.
So, do you use it at all, Ben? Do you use Manga Studio, or have you tried it?
You know, I've been trying to teach myself for I don't know, about a year now, I think. I'm not very good with it. I'm still really struggling just trying to get it to be functional for me. But it's, you know, I recognize how great of a tool it is. I have been watching like YouTube videos, and unfortunately I don't use it enough. So I went through probably a couple months of just looking at videos, trying to learn stuff, trying to figure out how to do certain things like lettering and stuff like that. And I got to a point where I had kind of sort of figured it out, and then I stopped using it for a little bit, and I forgot all of it.
Yeah, and that was something that I know the first time that I met you, Ben, or one of the first times when we were talking about illustration software, the first question, because they didn't have version 5 of Manga Studio, it was just version 4, and it was like, so I just got this Manga Studio 4 thing, I think was how the conversation went, and it's like, so do you know how to use it? And the question was like, no, do you?
Yeah.
And one of the things was with version 4, or at least with 4EX, which is what I dived into without trying the debut version, which they strip out some of the more advanced features. It's a little easier to wrap your head around. It was so much information on the screen at the same time that I just got totally intimidated, and it took me forever to kind of figure out what was going on within the program. And in the latest version, at least in 5, they fixed a lot of that. Like, if you'd use Photoshop, at least I found, if you're a Photoshop type person, then it's really, really easy. So anyways...
Actually, I'm going to counter that. No, actually, I am a Photoshop person, and I found it very difficult.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's just, and I think that's the biggest problem is
it's a different paradigm.
Very counterintuitive, I think. For and we kind of mentioned this earlier. It's just not, you know, it doesn't flow the same way. You know, you would think it's here, it's there. It doesn't. You know, they don't call things the same thing. You don't call things that are recognizable. So it's just really kind of, I don't know. I've had a really hard time just kind of wrapping my head around it. I've gotten almost functional with it, but I mean just fundamentally functional with it, not feeling like I'm in control of the program at all.
So let's ask McCraine some stuff then. Let's
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we've got a couple of things that people want to see demos on. So, anyways, the first one then is actually from the YouTube page.
Yeah.
And people are wanting to know how to do paneling. How to get started with panels. So I don't know if Stephen wants to take that one or if someone else should take that. Do you want to take that one, Stephen? Or?
Yes. Oh, actually, can someone else take it? My roommate just popped in.
All right. Well, okay. I will go ahead and I will then go over the panels then while.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that.
Okay. Well, never mind. Okay, so then, Stephen, do you want to...
You should take it. You should take it.
Okay, I'll go ahead and
I need to lock my door real quick.
So I've got Manga Studio, and I apologize for the over-the-shoulder thing. I've got a new camera set up that I'm working on. I haven't finalized where the camera is, and this is actually kind of an over-the-shoulder thing, so that in future shows I can actually have the camera on the work when I'm working. But so I've got Manga Studio loaded up here on my Cintiq tablet, and so. Can you guys see that? It should be showing up here in a second for those people who are staring. Okay, so we've got a bunch of people that have Manga Studio that have joined the chat and say that they're wanting to learn more about how to use it, and so that's awesome. So anyways, I'm here in Manga Studio 5EX. Now, all the stuff I'm going to show also works the same in the 5 regular version. Now, the interface looks a little bit bigger than your typical Manga Studio because I actually have it in what's called touchscreen mode because my Cintiq has a touchscreen, and so it makes the buttons just a little bit bigger so that I can click on them or I can tap them, and then it allows me to collapse these menus on the sides so that I can use all my screen real estate. So that's the only real difference in the interface. Everything, all the rest of the menus are in the same spots. So what we're going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go, and I'm going to just pretend this is Manga Studio 5 and not the EX version. EX just adds some extra stuff like story mode, which allows you to edit multiple pages at the same time and do a story or do multiple pages simultaneously. So like down here, this is the stuff that's in EX, this multi-page thing. So I'm going to go ahead and disable that. I'm just going to close this down. I'm going to get rid of the template. This is all like EX stuff down here. So anyways, so I want to create a new document, and it's just going to be a regular document. Now I have these set up as custom. Most of the page layouts are actually European page formats. So you've got like your A4, your A5, your A6, all of those. But I find it just easy enough if you're in the United States where you know that you're going to be printing with United States type page sizes. You can just set your dimensions here. Now, I've done a lot of comics lately that are 6 inches by 9 inches because they're going to be printing at trade paperback size, 6 by 9. And so I just set my width here to 6, my height to 9. Now resolution, usually if I'm just penciling, I'll have my resolution at like 300 dpi. But if I'm doing an actual final comic page, it will either be at 600 or 1200. So I'm just going to go ahead and set 1200 here. Now, as far as this resolution, when you're doing DPI, and this is something that I cannot emphasize more, if your computer can handle running the higher DPI and drawing at a higher DPI, always go with the higher DPI. Go with at least 600, if not 1200, if you ever plan on any time in the future printing your comic at all.
Preach it.
Yeah, I cannot state this enough. So many people go, oh, I'm going to do it at 72 DPI. And yeah, that looks fine on your screen, but the problem is if you try printing it, you're going to see it's all pixelated, it's going to look really nasty. Most digital printers print at a minimum of 300 DPI, and so if you really want to be able to use your art in the future on other things and take pride in your art, do it at either 600 or 1200. Yeah, okay, so then we've got our expression color. Like, okay, so yeah, that's my DPI thing, my DPI talk. Anyways, so this is going to be a relatively large file, but that's okay. Storage space is cheap. Hard drives are inexpensive now. They actually are very inexpensive. It's okay if your files are big. So I'm going to, because this page is going to be, you get to pick your color mode. You can do monochrome, gray, or color. If you're going to be coloring on your page, this is essentially just the mode for your original layer. So I'm just going to set it to gray, because I'm just going to be doing some pencils here. And then this number of basic lines is actually interesting. This has to do with screen tone lines. If you convert to screen tones, this is like the lines per inch, I believe. So for any of you who are interested in doing screen toning, this number is important. You can change it later on if you try exporting your screen tones and they don't look right. And then you just set your paper color. Now in EX, you've got this extra thing where you've got template, where you can set custom frame templates, and then they have this multi-page feature that allows you to select your number of pages that you want in the document. But if you've got the base version, you don't have that necessarily. So you've got, well, you don't have the pages thing. I can't remember if you have the template or not. I think you do. So you just kind of have this, but that's okay. So we're just going to go ahead and create this. And so now we've got this our base page. Now I could just go ahead and start drawing panels on here, but I'm going to walk through this as if I'm actually creating a comic page. And so what I want to do is I actually want to have precise panels. I'm very meticulous. I started out as a newspaper cartoonist. Actually, Steve and I were published side by side in the same newspaper. I want to have the very, very strict, very regimented panels. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go up here to View, and I'm going to click on Grid. Now what this does is this brings up a little grid. Now this grid allows me to place things on the page. Now right now it's not quite at the right position, so I'm going to go here to View, I'm going to go to grid settings and just double check. Now up here we can set actually our reference points. Now the grid is useful for all sorts of stuff. It's useful for panels, it's useful for drawing, but this is mainly, it's really good for layouts. So I can set this reference point tells me where I'm referencing the grid from. I can do it in the center of the page. You see a little red X goes to the middle. I can do it top left, top right. But usually most pages are referenced from the top left corner. And then you can also do custom if you want to reference from a custom location. So down here, I want to set my gap. And that's between these major grid lines, these bolder ones that you should be able to see. I think you guys can see them. I want those to be right now. Okay, I want them to be 1 inch, and they are. So I've got 6, and then I've got 9, or I've got 6 blocks here, big blocks, and I've got 9 big blocks horizontal, which is good. And then I want my subdivisions. I want them divided into 1/4 inches, so I have it by 4, and so that's divided that into the 4. So I go OK. So now I've got this grid. Now I could just start drawing again with the panel borders, but I don't want to do that because I actually want to make sure that I'm precisely in the right place. I want to have a 1/2 inch border all the way around on my image. So I'm going to go back up to View, and I'm going to go click on Snap to Grid. And what this is going to do is when I try drawing things with the frame tool, it's actually going to snap the frame to the grid at these 1/2 inch increments, so that way I get a very precise panel border. And now this is particularly important if you're doing a publication that's going to have many pages, and you want to make sure that your outer dimensions on your borders or your frames are the same every time. So then I want to go ahead and draw my panel. So I'm going to come down here. I'm actually going to, it's the figure tool. Now this icon changes. This is one of the funky things about Manga Studio, and I don't know if I like it. And what happens is, depending upon what tool you have referenced, this icon changes. So if I go up here and I want rectangle frame, notice that it's got this frame icon now. If I click on I want a divide frame tool, it changed the icon again. That is one of my little pet peeves about Manga Studio that I don't really like, but it's one of the things that I guess you just have to learn to live with, at least for right now, unless someone knows how to lock the icon. But anyways, so I want to start and I want to draw my frames. I'm going to do, you actually can start with a basic frame to fill the whole page and then subdivide the frame. So I want my frame to, when I create my frame down here in the frame properties, I want it to create a new folder for each frame, so that way any of the stuff inside the frame is going to be inside the frame. I'm actually going to unclick this. This is from something another project I was doing, which kept the frame in a locked aspect ratio. And then down here we actually have this anti-aliasing. Now a lot of people like to up their anti-alias when they draw lines because it makes the line look smoother, and that's actually more important if you're working at a low DPI, like 72. But if you're working at high DPI, like 300, 600, 1200, this doesn't matter anymore. You can ink with no anti-aliasing at all, and when you export your image so that people can view it, it will look just fine, because the smoothing will happen when you export and shrink down the image. So
Nathan, you're not listening to my secret messages, man.
What, slow down? Is that what you're saying?
No, let's pick McCrane's brain.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to show this, and then we're going. I've got a bunch of questions for McCrane.
Okay.
Don't sweat it. Don't sweat it. I'm actually learning a lot because I used Manga Studio 4, and I've actually never seen Manga Studio 5, so I'm like, wow, what is all this stuff?
Oh God, he's learning our secrets. He's going to become even more powerful. We can't.
All right, so anyway, so
at some point during the show, I get to say, "Damn you, McCrane!"
All right, so anyways, on the rectangle frame, so that I can snap to the grid and stuff, I have the selected possible to snap, and so then if I come in and draw, you notice it's snapping to that grid. I come down here, I deselect, or I unclick or whatever, and it takes a second, but then it actually creates my frame folder here. And now the frame folder actually contains everything. So if I click on the paper, this is what the page looks like. I can actually hide my grid now if I want. And I can actually just set it. I'm just going to set it so that it doesn't snap to grid anymore. So this is what the frame actually looks like. But if you go in, it'll have the border in blue. Anything you draw inside this frame on any layers inside, it'll actually crop them. So if I take my pencil and I start drawing, notice it gets masked off at the edge of the frame, which is awesome. If you want to change the thickness of the frame border, you can use the operation tool, or object select tool as I like to call it. You click on the border. Down here in the properties, you can actually adjust the thickness Numerically, if you want, I could set it to 20 if I want it thinner. And then it will adjust the frame border. There's a little bit of lag because of the screen sharing, but I mean, I think that's fine. So anyways, now let's say I want to subdivide my frame real quick. And I only need like another minute. So back here in the figure tool, we actually have, now there are a couple different ways to do frames. There's polyline frames, so you can draw a frame, stuff like that. Rectangle frame is usually what I use. There's this divide tool. And the divide tool, it has a couple different methods. You can divide with a straight line, you can divide with like curvy stuff. If you have Manga Studio, I recommend you experiment with these. But here they've got 3 settings. You've got divide frame folder and duplicate inside layer. You've got divide frame folder and create empty folder. And then you've got divide not folder but frame border. So those have different effects on your final art. But the one I usually use is this first one, because what it does is it duplicates everything, creates a new frame with all the same stuff in it, and then creates all its subfolders. So if you just kind of click, notice I'm holding down the left mouse button. It's in here, and it's trying to create that linear path. If you hold down Shift, it will lock it in a cardinal direction. You let go, and then it will actually do the processing and split the border. And so now I've got, notice another frame appeared. Now, one thing Manga Studio does, it kind of does these in a reverse fashion, and so a lot of times the one on top ends up on top. So I usually just move the new frame, whatever. Now this one was proper, but a lot of times it'll do it backwards. So, but then you can continue subdividing your frames exactly how you want. And then when you're done, and if you look at your page, I mean, this is your layout right here. And so it's actually pretty easy to do your frames and to split your page into frames. And then there's also a way to, and I'm not going to show it today, but there's actually ways to store your frames as a template so that you can use them on future pages and import them as a material, which is really cool and something I learned just the other day. But this is kind of the basics on frames, so hopefully that explains the frame thing. And then there was a real quick question on how to do screen tones. Well, that's actually pretty easy. If you've got a picture, and I've got something in here, I'm just doing a scribble, but, and I want it to be screen tones up here under the effect. The instant thing is to change the line type to tone, and it will actually convert it to screen tones at the proper lines per inch. And then you can adjust the tone lines here. So that's a really cool way. If you're doing it in color or you're doing straight up black and white and you want it screen tone for print, you can instantly turn it to screen tone. My other favorite feature is just this layer color instead, which will actually turn its default to blue line, but it'll turn any pencil image into blue line. So I actually do a lot of traditional pencils in actual pencil, then paste it in and just click this button, and it converts it to blue line so that I can ink over it. But anyway, so that's panels. And so now let's get to the other really cool stuff that people wanted to ask, and that was how to ink faster. People wanted to know how to vector ink in Manga Studio. And so that's the one that I really wanted to pass over to Stephen, so he can demo a little bit about vector inking and tips and tricks on how to do vector inking better.
Cool, can you guys see my screen?
It's loading.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
Yes or no?
There we go.
Yes.
Cool.
Wait, no, I see Nathan's head. There we go.
Yeah.
Hi.
Okay, good, awesome. Yeah, man, I actually my pen exploded. Ben, I really identify with you now. That was like, that is complicated. I don't know if you guys see my layout, but it's not less complicated, it's just a different version, and I'm like, I haven't seen all those buttons before, so I'm like, feeling intimidated.
Yeah, the interface is different.
Once I saw Doug TenNapel give a talk on how, because he did a book called, let's see here, I think it's like Ghostopolis and maybe Bad Island. He did digitally, and he never actually learned how to do any of that stuff. He just takes the square tool, makes a square, and then and then it's a panel.
Yeah.
And he pulls another square, and then he's done. So I mean, there's various levels. Like if you want to learn how to do it, then it's really great. But if you just want to, I don't know, use it to make comics, that's an option too. Inking faster. I would definitely recommend Manga Studio for inking faster because of the wonderful vector options.
Mm-hmm.
So I see you're sketching a quick demo character here.
Yeah, let me just drop that. We'll pass it down real quick so I can see what I'm doing.
Yeah. Now, for those who are wondering, this is actually Manga Studio EX4. So this is the previous version of Manga Studio, which I love. I love EX4 to death. The more I used it, the more I fell in love with it.
I'm going to create a vector layer. One of the nice things is, I think in Photoshop sometimes I would be inking and I'd realize, oh, that I just inked on top of my pencils. And I was like, ah! But with this, you can really tell like what layer you're on because it'll, when you're on the vector layer, it only uses ink, which is kind of nice. What I really like about the man, I just realized I can only do one thing at a time, so it's really hard for me to talk and draw. What I really like about this tool is that so there's this when you're inking, like if you're pulling if you're inking to an edge, let's say you have a character and then you have his background. If you want to kind of push the background way behind him, you're going to when the lines kind of approach him, they're going to kind of fall off. But if you want to kind of imply that one line is going behind another, oops.
Yeah.
Sorry. You want to imply that one line's kind of going behind another. In traditional inking, you kind of ink right up to it and kind of like make sure that that little transition there was really nice. What you can do with vectors, though, is it treats everything with paths. So I can make a line and then take my eraser and go across it, and it'll delete up to the intersection. It's really useful.
Just the eraser. You don't have to do anything special to do that.
That's the.
Just the eraser, and it's just I mean there are properties, I think. So if I go to eraser and then tool settings, oops, I don't know where. Oh yeah, here it is. So there's settings right here under eraser that will dictate that. I have it on clear to intersection, but there's, let's see here, clear lines, so I could just pull it across and delete the entire line independently.
Okay. I apologize. I did not see where you were going to get to see the properties or see the.
Oh, is it too small? Is it too small on my screen?
No, it's just showing your draw window. Oh, now we're zoomed in on your Manga Studio logo at the top.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna try to change my screen resolution. Maybe is it hard to see? Let's hear it.
Right now we're only seeing like the header at the top.
Okay.
There you go.
Can you see my eraser tool options now? Or
No.
is it bigger?
No.
Oh, that's weird. So
Did you share the Manga Studio window or your monitor?
I shared the Manga Studio window, yeah.
Okay, that's why.
Probably
It's just showing the main window.
Is there a way I can fix that?
Go back to your screen share, and then select the monitor.
Entire screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, share into a screen.
All right, how about now?
There we go.
Okay, yeah, now we see it. Okay, now we see all the
Cool.
tools.
Yeah, I did a lower resolution, so hopefully everything's all big and blown up. But
A little
so
jittery.
here's our eraser tool.
Okay, I think it was showing. It's a little jittery. You can
Yeah,
minimize
yeah.
the window with the video stream if you want.
I'm not showing it. I'm showing Manga Studio now.
The video stream is blitting a little. Please stand by for. Okay,
Living.
that's
How does it look now?
eh.
It's
Hmm.
it's fine. We get the gist of what you're saying.
It's workable. We can at least kind of see the stuff, so that's fine.
You kind of see the windows now?
Yeah.
Now I'm curious. I kind of want to go to the YouTube stream and see what it looks like.
Vector. Wait. I just saw it. I see what you're talking about. I got it.
Wait.
I got it. Oh, that's
Did you
bad.
figure it out?
Dude.
I guess I'll just have to kind of describe what I'm doing.
Wait. Damn you, McCraine.
Damn you, McCraine!
Dude, this is awesome. No, because okay, let me back up. You showed us this at 24-hour Comic Book Day, and you know it's one of those situations where you've been doing it wrong for as long as you've been doing it, and you see somebody show you how to do it right, and you're like, oh my god, I've been doing it wrong for 20 years.
McCraine.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh man, do you know how much time that will save? That is insane.
Yeah. Can you guys see my? Okay. So is my screen back or no?
Looks like it just got better. Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Well, it's still twitchy a little bit, but we'll tell you what. Go back to sharing just the Manga Studio.
Yeah, go back
to
just sharing the regular window. That seemed to work better.
Yeah.
And just real quick, let me just switch cameras real quick. I'm going to point out where that tool is in version 5.
Yeah,
just so that people know where it is. And so down here in Manga Studio 5, if you click on the eraser, it's actually named Vector. It's its own eraser now, that tool that Steve is talking about. So when he says, you create your vector layer and you draw your vector, and you draw another intersecting vector, if you have over here the vector eraser selected, it'll do that erase if you erase across, which is really cool. So anyways, we'll switch it back to Stephen. All right, now we're back on Stephen's. So I just pointed that out, and here we go. So what brush are you using, Stephen?
Just the Mario brush.
Just the regular Mario?
Mario and the G brush are pretty nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another really nice tool that I like is that I'm starting to realize how important just line thickness is as far as creating depth and stuff like that. So one of the cool things about these vector layers is that, like, if I'm drawing some lines for my hair here, these lines that are on the interior, there's kind of a hierarchy that I have to observe, where like these lines on the inside compete with the lines on the outside. I should probably make the lines that are inside the head a little bit thinner, so that because they're not as hierarchically important. Because this is interesting. One of the things I noticed about the way Jeff Smith works is he really relies on silhouettes, because you see black first. You see black and white first. So first you'll see like the silhouette of things, kind of the shape of it. Maybe we have this kind of black figure kind of rushing into the scene, and he's got a gun, and then there's someone back here trying to stop him from shooting them or whatever. So first we see silhouettes. That's like the first hierarchy, and he basically he tries to preserve that hierarchy all throughout the as he continues inking. So the next thing we'll see after we see the silhouettes is then we'll see kind of the bigger line forms, like the body, the lines that delineate the body and the head and maybe the expressions. And then last of all, we'll see all the teeny details. And you'll notice when you look at a Jeff Smith drawing, it's like really like just thin, lots of little teeny thin lines delineating the details. So it looks detailed at the end, but it's actually on the basis of it, it's just a really simple drawing. Anyway, all that to say, I want to reduce the importance of these lines right here. So I will, and this is where Nathan might have to jump in real quick, but there's a tool called Change Width. I'm not even joking. Oops. Right now I have Change Width, and I pull it over my lines, and it shrinks them until it's an appropriate kind of a thickness. Um, that's really helpful. For instance, I could maybe ink the character on its own layer and then the background layer in the background, and I always would notice that like I would want to reduce the lines of the background to kind of make the main character pop forward, because it's just hard to kind of force yourself to ink like super thin, super thick, and I guess obviously Jeff Smith does not have this tool when he inks, but yeah, it's really nice to be able
Jeff Smith.
Samuel Jeff Smith. So yeah, right now I pulled the line across the shoulders, and I'll just use my eraser tool because it's just so much easier that way. One tool that I don't really use that much, I think I've only used it like maybe once or twice. You can actually grab the lines. Right now there's a little hand, and I'm gonna grab the end of this line and just kind of pull them over, so I can kind of.
That's useful.
Which is really crazy. Yeah, there we go. So now I kind of pulled them over. You can also thicken it. I'm actually looking at some of these. I don't know if I don't actually use all of these. Distort. I don't know what that does. I don't even know. Yeah, reduced, fixed width. Ooh, what's that one? Oh, that's cool. There's one where you can select it and they all turn into a single width. They just basically deletes all of the thickness, all of the
Oh yeah.
line variants. That's interesting. Ooh. All this to say, you don't have to know everything, but there's some really useful stuff. So yeah, that's how I would ink quick.
All right, so just real quick, so I can show what Stephen was talking about in 5. So there are just some tools that are, if you come into regular Manga Studio, over here, it doesn't normally look like this, but it's this control point tool down here, or the correct line tool, and then under here it has the subtools for pinch vector line, simplify, connect, correct, redraw line width. And so in the tools, like in these different tools, then it has the subsettings so you can recreate what Steve is doing. So going back to you, Steve.
Thanks. What's the next question?
All right, so let's see here. I do have some questions from people who weren't able to make it to the show, but I'm going to see if anybody had any other questions other than... We had a couple people asking about our the panels and the screen tones, which we answered. Let's see here. Okay, so I don't see any currently in the stream chat or on the Twitter. But
did you guys see that Manga Studio was offered for like $20? Manga Studio 4 EX was for like $20 like a week or two ago.
Yeah,
it was nuts.
Ridiculously low price. If you see it for that price, buy it. I mean, like, if all you need to do is inking, if you don't need a tool that also lets you do coloring, I mean, Manga Studio 4, you can color in it. But if all you need to do is inking, 4EX is amazing, and $20 is the most incredible price.
Ridiculous.
I paid like $150, $160 for it when it was the version that was out, and I thought it was worth it back then.
Yeah.
And so, $20 now is just insane. Yeah. Like Manga Studio 5 base version, just the debut version is like $30 or $40, depending upon where you look. So $20 for the previous version, and the previous version is a very good. The main difference is just that in EX they purchased an additional painting engine from a different company, and they integrated that with their software so that way you can do more painterly stuff in the newer Manga Studio. That's the real big difference between 4 and 5 is the painting engine and the brush engine was improved. But if all you're doing is inking, 4 is way more than sufficient for inking and lettering.
Yeah.
So one of the other questions, at least I'm going to go over to DeviantArt so I can just read it directly. But we had a question that was, the person was interested in how to use perspective rulers and custom rulers. So,
yeah.
you have any experience with the perspective rulers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're awesome.
And these were a thing that in 4EX, I believe perspective rulers only came with the EX version. But in both the base version and the EX version of 5, you get the perspective rulers. So this is for 4EX, 5, and 5EX.
Usually I start out with, like you're probably, if you're like, you have a character that you drew, and they're kind of, like usually you can kind of freehand a lot of perspective stuff, but sometimes, yeah, freehand a lot of perspective stuff, but when you're using the perspective tool, it's a really nice way to kind of get to zone in on your, my goodness, it's so hard to talk and draw at the same time.
It's hard.
I only have like one track in my mind. Alright, things, words, using the word times. So, this guy obviously has some perspective to him, a little bit of foreshortening. And I can kind of figure out like where, maybe where generally yeah, that might look good. Where generally think like the horizon line might be. But if I wanted to drop down just a room for him to live in, can you guys see that okay?
Yeah.
Now would be a good time to use my perspective tool. So we, under the ruler menu, new special ruler, at least in Manga Studio 4, we have 1, 2, 3-point perspective. I'm going to click 2-point perspective. It's probably all over. I don't want to get too crazy. Let's use 3-point, why not? Alright. Oh man, can you guys not see that though?
Oh, I can see it.
Oh yeah, we can see it.
Oh good, alright.
Yeah.
So here's the horizon line. And then I'm going to kind of just, according to where I've laid down these lines already. And I guess things would...
What are you doing right there? Because this is usually where I make a big mess of everything.
So, there are ways of, I don't know exactly the question, but you mean like how do I manipulate these lines?
No, what are you doing? So you've got, like, I understand 3-point perspective, like when you're on paper and with a pencil and ruler and stuff.
Yeah.
I just don't understand, like, where do you put your points? Like I see you, okay, you're moving the horizon line, that's cool, but you're just moving the other things around, like...
Yeah.
like you just don't care.
It is kind of random at this point. Let me draw some more objects just so I can figure out.
Okay, so it is random, okay. I'm not crazy.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you're not crazy.
Okay.
So,
I mean...
So what he's doing is he's actually setting you got to set the horizon line where your horizon is, and then you actually set your vanishing points. And so when he was doing the 3-point perspective, there are all sorts of lines everywhere because you got guides for all these different vanishing points.
Right.
And for anybody who's interested in Manga Studio 5, that for creating that quick perspective ruler, it's actually located under the layer tool on the top, or on the top title bar next to file, edit, story. You click on layer, you click on ruler frame, and then you click create perspective ruler, and that will allow you to create a perspective ruler, and it'll ask you if you want 1, 2, or 3-point perspective. And then you click OK, and then it'll bring up a view that's very similar to the one that Steve had. And then actually to manipulate that, you want to use the operation tool. It's the one that has the little cube with the mouse clicking on it icon to manipulate those lines, which is a little bit different from EX4 because they had to reprogram that into 5. They didn't have that initially in 5.
Alright, so I drew, like I said, you can kind of freehand it and figure it out if you want to get some really precise stuff going. that's where, yeah, I mean, so now it'll make a little bit more sense as far as my thought process goes. Because I have a general sense where my horizon line will be. There's these, if you guys see, there's like these little, when I actually touch these lines, it's connected to the vanishing point.
Right.
And there's a little X so I can use to move them around somewhere. I'm going to move it to like an edge of the object that I've drawn. And then there's a handle that rotates around the X. So this is, I don't know if you guys can, I hope you guys can see this.
Yeah, I can see it.
There's like a little handle where I can actually pull the handle down and make that line flush with the one that's in my thumbnail drawing. It actually pushed the horizon line out way far away, which normally if you were doing perspective on like obviously pencil and paper, you couldn't have like some vanishing points, if you want to be accurate about it, are going to be like 3 feet away or 4 or 5 feet away.
Mm-hmm.
But now I can actually have vanishing points that are that far away because there's no limitations on the digital canvas. So I'm kind of lining it up like, oh, at the top of this car would be like that, the bottom of this, would be kind of like that. And then if it's a 3-point perspective, I got a building here, I can kind of figure out where the building would vanish towards by lining everything up. So now that my vanishing points are in the proper locations, I'm going to just pull these lines off the page so that they don't bother me while I'm drawing. But every single line that I draw will go towards the vanishing point. I'm going to just make it a little bit easier to see. I usually use this tool to pencil with, but because I don't like super precise looking kind of drawings. Oops! Dang, I think I need an extra vanishing point. I messed this up. Wait, hold on. Hold on, guys, don't hit me. Yeah, that'll work better. It's weird, like perspective's so weird because we sense what looks right, but it's hard to actually make a kind of a science of it.
And this perspective tool has saved me hundreds of hours on illustrations, especially doing backgrounds, because it makes doing stuff like cityscapes so much easier.
Yeah.
Man, I just fake all that stuff.
Again, if this is a vector layer and I'm drawing a building, this is when it really. Oops. I turned it into a vector layer and deleted everything. Anyway, this is when it would normally come in handy. Yeah. If you're drawing a building and you have your vector layer open, that's when like having that delete thing comes in handy because now I can just pull a grid and then just drag it across, and now I got a bunch of windows.
Yep.
See?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the perspective tool.
Frickin' McCraney.
Very cool. And so I did have another question, which was someone was wondering if there was a way to color if your line art is on a vector layer. So they were curious about if there are any tips and tricks we had for coloring.
I don't color with Manga Studio. I actually color with Photoshop, so I'm actually pretty illiterate as far as color goes.
Okay.
There are color layers that I'm familiar with, but like you were saying, Manga Studio 4 doesn't have a lot of color functionality, so Manga Studio 5 is probably a better one to look at.
But that's really cool with the with all of those with the perspective tool, and the perspective tool in 5 looks a little bit different, but it functions essentially the same way. And then, so can you turn on and turn off the different vanishing points in 4?
Yeah.
Because that's a feature in 5, so I was just curious.
Oh, not individually. It's either all on or all off. It's like you have these buttons at the top that dictates what your lines snap to.
Mm-hmm. Well, very cool. Alrighty, so let's see. Are there any other questions? I don't think that we have any other questions. Now, I can show one really quick trick that I learned if you guys want, about coloring with a vector layer in Manga Studio. It's like a 2-second, or well, like a 2-minute thing that I can show real quick to answer that one question. So, and we've got, let's say, we've got our vector, and we've got something that we want to draw. So let's just say this is a person, and I've got the same thing set with my eraser, so it does erase to the intersections like that, which I love. And I actually learned that from someone who learned it from Stephen here, so that's really cool, and it's saved me a lot of time. But anyway, so I've got like this person, and I want to color him. Now, if you're in Manga Studio 4 and you try coloring on a vector, or I'm sorry, in 5, you try coloring on a vector layer, it just gives you this angry no sign, because you cannot do flood fills on a vector layer in Manga Studio. So what you can do is you can create a new raster layer, put that below your vector layer where your line art is. I'm going to set this to color, because you got to set your color mode separately. So now I've got this raster layer, and I could fill in here. But if I was going to fill normally, it would actually just fill the whole page. So what you actually do, so if I click here, and I guess it's black, so it's just going to fill the whole thing with black. And lag. Yeah, so fill the whole thing with black, which we don't want. So I want to make his smiley face happy yellow, but I don't want to fill the whole screen with yellow, because that wouldn't be very good. So one of the really cool things that I've learned recently is that instead of doing this, because you don't want this, you actually can do a thing. You can use what's called reference layers. You right-click on your vector layer, you go up to Layer Settings, you click Set as Reference Layer, and that means that when you're doing things with these reference layers, you actually refer to this particular layer, this line art layer. Then under the Fill Bucket tool, you come in here. Now, usually I have them activated, but usually you have to bring up your subtool dialog for this. You come into Reference, this Reference tab, you make sure that this multiple referring is selected, and that the little lighthouse icon is checked. And then you click down here at Stop Filling at Center Line of Vector. And then once I've got that selected, if I come over here and I have my raster layer selected, now if I click inside the little smiley face, it just fills the smiley face. And it actually fills all the way up to the middle of the vector line. So the middle of this vector line is where it fills to. So that way you don't get jaggy pixels when you're trying to flood fill your line art. Now down here, of course, if I were to hide the line art, of course, we've got this little blank thing, because it does have a little bit of gap closing, and it only fills to the middle of the vector. So it filled to the middle of this, and then it didn't fill this area. So I just come in here, select my raster layer, I click in there to fill. Now, if I hide the layer, see, it's contiguous.
Wow, that would make whatchamacallit really a lot easier. Color blocking?
I use this for flatting all the time.
Flatting, that's the word.
For flatting, because it makes flatting, instead of being like a 4-hour exercise. I'm not a colorist. I am an inker. So whenever it comes to coloring, I'm not bad at it. I'm just slow at it. And flatting just takes me absolutely forever. It takes me hours. So this actually lets me go from hours on a piece to, I can flat an entire inked page. If I've inked on a vector layer, I can flat the entire page in like 15-20 minutes, which saves me a ton of time, because then, once I've flatted it, then I just go up here, I go File, Export Layered, and then I export it as a Photoshop document, the PSD, and then I just give it my PSD name, and then I take it into Photoshop to finish the coloring.
Okay.
Once I've done my flatting. So I love that. But anyways, that was one little thing I wanted to share with you guys.
That is so cool.
Yeah, and that's one of the cool things that I don't know if 4 will do it, but I do know that 5 will do it, and it is so cool. That has saved me so much time. That and the trick I learned from you, which was the vector eraser vector cross thing, has saved me tons and tons of time. So yeah, anyways.
Yeah, those are both awesome.
Cool stuff. So did you have anything you wanted to add, Jen, before we wrap up here?
No, mostly I just want to kind of want to know what McCrane's been working on lately.
Yeah, what have you been working on, Steve? You want to show off anything?
Don't call him Steve. Call him McCraine. That way you can go McCraine.
I've been learning how to color, which I'm really excited about.
Woo!
And I've been, let's see here. Do you remember that comic I started for 24-Hour Comics Day?
Oh, you've got more pages.
Yeah, but I'm gonna try to get it done in the next week, but kind of long. So this is rudimentary color that you could do in 4, but there's obviously no blending or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a trick. If you want to make a brush that doesn't have, notice how all my lines are all jaggedy and kind of textured. I think there's a lot more nuanced ways of doing this, but you can't see my toolboxes. Nuts. So there's a brush that I made. So if you look on your pen tool options, there's a you can pick like directions, and I just put the direction on random, and then I made the line an oval instead of a circle, and it creates like that.
So it looks more like a Conte crayon or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, crayon texture. That's really cool. And is that inked also vector layers?
Yeah.
With your brushes.
Sweet.
So that's a really cool feature then, is that the vector brushes, you can have funky looking brushes. They're like the Photoshop brushes that people like a lot, but it maintains that texture on the vector, and then you can edit it afterwards.
I finished inking a project I'm working on.
Oh, there's the direction you're talking about.
Direction?
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to follow.
She's looking in the program.
Oh yeah. Finished inking this comic book I'm doing for a nonprofit about basically about nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Here's a page spread I'm proud of because I got to draw.
I like that.
Guts. I've never drawn a cartoon rectum before. It's for the sake of the kids, so yeah,
really
it's a cool. I was proud of that, how that one turned out.
That is really cool. I wish I had a book like that when I was in school.
Part of the digestive system. It's funny, like you don't really think of that when you're teaching kids about digestion. Like you always like with Magic School Bus, like they get eaten by Arnold or whatever, and then they start driving through his digestive system, and like halfway into the small intestines, the kids realize like, wait a minute, where are we going? I think they had to drive back up and go out the nose or something like that. But
yeah.
It's inevitable with digestion. You gotta end up at the butt sometime. There's just no avoiding it. Here's a whoops.
I saw that bike you were showing us at a 24-hour.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. With the 3D bike that you can add in.
Yeah, this is where I got into a lot of trouble because there's tons of places to download free 3D models that work completely with Manga Studio, but actually being able to manipulate them in 3D Studio is like a whole nother art form.
Yeah.
Can I see what you've made with the 3D models? Or did you actually make anything, or just play around with stuff?
Yeah.
Show me the things.
You bring it up, Jen, and I'll switch the camera to you.
Well, let me also find the website. That way, people who are interested in finding 3D models can do that.
Yeah, and that's an advanced feature in Manga Studio that I haven't even touched yet, which is the fact that 4EX, 5 and 5EX all support importation of 3D models that you can position and use kind of as a guide for illustrating. So you can do things like if you're going to use the same city over and over and over again, you could do a 3D model of like the buildings and then just import the city, set your camera wherever you're going to be at any point of time in the comic, and then just use that as your guide for drawing the city, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's just that easy.
It's not easy.
No, it's not.
Working with 3D models is a lot harder than people think. They go, oh yeah, you just throw in a 3D model. If you've ever tried actually working with 3D models, getting the camera stuff working right is a bit of a challenge. Now, if you can get good at it, it is a huge time saver, but it's the learning curve on 3D models, at least as far as I can tell, in both 4 and 5, is pretty steep. But it is a useful thing. It's useful like the perspective ruler is useful. So you'd done something with the chopper, right?
Yeah, and I don't know exactly where I got it from. I'm still looking up the. Oh, it's this one. It's this one.
Okay. Did you find it?
I think this website looks right. It's something super generic called like tf3dm.com. I think that's right. Let me try looking for helicopters. Which apparently I don't know how to spell at all. Yes. So, alright, let's figure out how to screen share.
Up over to Jen.
Yeah, full screen too. So this should be it. So it's this website right here. I think this is the one. And you can... Oh, wait, nope, these are not free, are they? So it's not this one.
But it's a similar one.
But yeah, basically I just Googled free 3D models, and then I did this whole thing to kind of check to see, you know, what works with...
Whoa.
Yeah, so here's my 3D helicopter, right? I install it. You go into like your folders, wherever they're at, and you plop it in there, and then you go up here to search under like file, import 3D file, and then good luck, you know. You try to find out that file you put in, and then you draw it in, and it's just the wrong size, and so you're trying to put it in here, and you're frantically trying to use this 3D controller selector thing, and before you know it, the helicopter's inside out. You've lost the rotator blades. You've lost parts of it that aren't attached. I mean, but you know, whatever, just whatever. I mean, you know. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, it's great.
Yeah, that's how it came out.
The pencils.
Yeah, that's what I got.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Normally
I'm just
ads,
trying
I feel like.
Here's the early struggle, and then here's the finish. In between there. But just imagine like me struggling.
It's like a cooking show where they like, and now we already have some that we already baked.
Yeah, you chop the onion, and then here's the lasagna. Yeah.
Ding! It's finished.
But yeah, so I've been using that helicopter quite a bit. Yeah. And then it turns out they're not even supposed to be using like Apache helicopters. They're using these like bigger like war machine helicopters, and I'm like, oh, I drew this wrong.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Apaches now.
It's an Apache.
Yeah, it's not the first time I've done that wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's all right though.
Yeah.
Very cool. So anyways, with any other comments that people wanted to make? I don't think we have any other questions for tonight's show. I think we answered every question that we were given. So
I have one little question for my own stuff, because I swear to God, every time I figure this thing out, I forget it. How the hell do you make the borders around the page borders again? And like, you know, so you can do the cuts and the
Hey, do screen share, and then we'll do it over your shoulder.
I think I just did. You see it now?
Yeah.
Yeah. How do I do the that?
Panel border?
How do I do that? I forgot. I'm sitting here the whole show. I've been trying to find out how to do it again. I can't find it.
What are you drawing, Ben?
I'm just doodling.
Okay.
So I'm doing this, and then I can go.
Nailed it.
Smoke clouds.
all right. So the first thing you want to do is you want to select your figure tool.
Figure?
Yeah.
So wait, I have a question. If you go in, so can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
So in
Yeah.
Manga Studio 4, I just click. I click ruler, and then there's actually a layer type called panel ruler layer. And I
Hmm.
just click OK, and it automatically generates that square.
That's what I was thinking too, and I haven't found it.
Yeah, that's in 5. That's the it's now called the figure layer. I think it's the hotkey is U on the keyboard if you wanted to hotkey it, but it's going to look like your straight line tool. Yeah, you've got it up there, Ben.
Wait, what? Who's doing what to what?
Okay.
I've got what, where, who?
So Ben, on your screen.
Okay, got it.
You have selected already. It's usually going to be shown as like the line tool,
Frame.
or it's going to be, and so you go on that, and then you go up to frame, up on the top of the subtool menu, and then you select your rectangle tool.
Is. Okay.
And then you can click and drag your basic frame. But what's going to happen, you're going to notice something funky happen when you do that. So go ahead and do it, and you're going to see something funny happen.
I did, I think. Didn't I do that?
Okay, well, it did it, but all right. So that actually did create your frame layer. It looks like, and then the background on the frame layer is actually hidden right now, which is a good thing.
I just turned
so
it
you
on.
can see the line art. So you've got your frame now. I can't tell if it stroked it or not.
No, it didn't. It doesn't look like it did anyway.
So that's going to be down in your properties on the brush size. So you can actually edit the frame by clicking. You go to the operation tool. It's the little cube with the mouse on it. It's like the third one down on the left bar.
Yeah, yeah.
Or something like that. And then you can click on that frame. You click on the frame border.
Okay.
And then you can actually go just down in the properties, and you can just change the brush size on that. So you scroll down.
Nathan, can you actually apply your own ink outline around it instead of actually having
Yes, you can apply any brush to it. When you draw the line, when it generates the line, you can apply any brush.
What I mean is, so you can apply pressure, sensitivity stuff to it?
That's a little bit different. If I were to do that, I'd actually make it invisible.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would use a line ruler to lock the line, and then I'd just draw it by hand if I want to do sensitive. Yeah, you just have it really small. So you just want to make that bigger. Yeah, and see, it's got the brush applied to it. Now, it is a vector, so you could use that vector width manipulation to change the width if you want, I believe.
Yeah.
And it'll change the width on it for you. So you can tweak it that way. And then once you have your basic frame, you just go back to your figure tool, and down below that rectangular frame, you've got your divide frame. And it'll allow you to start subdividing. So you just click on that, and that has settings. Now yours is going to be really thin, Ben, because you've got really tiny splits. But that should give you the general idea. And the cool thing is, if you ever want to change, like where the split is, you can go back to your operation tool, click on the frame border, and you can actually drag it back and forth.
Yeah, and that's like I said. I mean, once I get to this part, I can kind of figure out what I'm doing. I just I could not freaking remember where to get to it.
In in Manga Studio 5, what I've learned is just that it is located where they've grouped it with all of the rulers and with all of the line and box and other like geometric shapes. Yeah. They're all kind of grouped together in the same thing. So if you're drawing a frame, because it's a geometric shape, it's grouped with all the other geometric shapes. Yeah. And so you just have to go in there, and then the subtool palette, you have to find it. And that's one of the things, that's why I said, it's really annoying, at least for me. Now, I love the program to death, but it does annoy me a little bit that the icons change. Because I would like the icons to be consistent, so I can say, instead of saying, click on the figure ruler, I can say, click on the ruler that looks like a little, or click on the button that looks like a little comic page.
Exactly.
It's easier to describe to people than click on the figure thing, because then you have to be like looking through and trying to figure out which is which and stuff like that. And the icon changes from brush to brush and stuff like that. That's a feature I do not like. But yes, they're all located under. And one cool thing you can do actually is from the subtool palette, and I won't recommend doing this right now, but it's a thing you can do. You can actually drag your subtool palette to your toolbar so that you have it as a quick reference button. So you can click that frame border thing in the subtool, just drag that over to your toolbar, and then you actually have that button. You got that button back. And so I actually do that specifically for a lot of like the inking brushes I use a lot, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I actually drag those to the side.
I need to do that. I just need to get, like I said, more than
it just takes
comfortable. Yeah.
It's just customization. It's just like sitting around and just sort of messing with it and kind of learning all of the little nitty-gritty details. Like I said, if you get really used to working on one program, that's the problem. That's one of the problems with when you switch it up between programs. But I have found that Manga Studio inks. It makes inking easier than any other program I've used, and I love inking in Illustrator. I've done thousands and thousands of cartoon strips in Illustrator. This is literal thousands and thousands. I'm not, exaggerating. I have done thousands of cartoon strips in Illustrator. I love inking in Adobe Illustrator. But I've found that Manga Studio does what I love to do better, especially since it supports vector layers. Yeah. So I can get those lines the same way I do in Illustrator, and the framing tools and the lettering tools just make it so much easier for me to produce the final piece. I don't have to transition to other programs to do my lettering and stuff like that, so it makes my life easier.
Oh, yeah.
So is there anything else you guys wanted to talk about before we wrap up here then?
I think that covers me.
All right, well, we had a little bit of a longer show, but I hope it was worth it for everybody who was watching. That was Getting Started with Manga Studio with our special guest, Steve McCraine. I've been your host tonight, Nathan Rackley, with co-hosts Jenn Myers and Ben Girven. So thank you very much for coming. We'll say, do you want to say anything else before we go, Stephen?
Yeah, thanks for having me. If you want to go to my website, doodlealley.com, I do a comic series of basically a series of comic essays where I try to describe everything I've learned so far as an artist and just give the best advice I can think of.
Yeah, you have a book out that collects all those essays called Brick by Brick, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, which can be ordered through my website as well. But thank you guys for having me.
Well, thanks for being on.
Cool. McCraine! McCraine!
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for coming out, and so we've been your hosts, and special thanks to Steve for coming and joining us tonight. If you'd like to learn more about Pen and Stylus and hear more from us, and ask us questions and suggest topics for future live streams and future episodes, follow us on Twitter at Pen and Stylus. Join our group over on Facebook, Pen and Stylus, or come and join our group on DeviantArt at penandstylus.deviantart.com.
And don't forget to stalk McCraney as well.
Yeah, and don't forget to stalk Stephen. He's over on doodlealley.com. It's a great website. Definitely check it out. And he's also around on DeviantArt and those other sites as well. So don't forget. Feel free to hit him up, ask him questions, buy his books. He's got excellent books. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much for everyone coming out. And for those who are interested, we will be doing the random character challenge stuff here with the sketching repeat in about 15 minutes. So we will be starting that stream separately, so stay tuned to the YouTube page for that. So thank you everybody for coming, and have a wonderful evening.